There's a lot of videos and articles about methods to increase testosterone, but what you don't hear about very much are things that can lower testosterone. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, mainly focusing on foods, but a couple other things that if you do these things habitually, they'll probably lower your testosterone even if you're at your peak of testosterone production, which would be between 19 and 25 years of age. I'm talking about men. So let's go into it right now and talk about some of these things. First of all, if you don't get enough sleep, I've mentioned this in past videos. If you don't get enough sleep, it will immediately lower your testosterone. They've done studies. Men, testosterone in men peaks at the age of 19. That's when you normally produce the highest levels of testosterone in men. They've shown in studies, even with men that young, if they get one bad night of sleep, with a bad night being defined as 5 hours of sleep or less, the testosterone drops anywhere from 15 to 20%. And that's in young men who are at the peak of the testosterone level. Habitually going without sufficient sleep. For example, people that they like to brag that, well, I get by on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. In most of these people, they will have habitually lower levels of testosterone. There's a number of reasons why. A lot of it has to do with the fact that when you don't get enough sleep, you get your levels of another hormone go up called cortisone, which is an adrenal steroid hormone that opposes testosterone. And there's also stress. That's a stress hormone. Other hormones go up, with the net effect being that lack of sleep causes low testosterone. Another way to effectively lower your testosterone would be to drink excessive amounts of alcohol. Alcohol actually lowers your testosterone through various mechanisms. The research on alcohol has changed recently. You might have heard in the past they were advising people that small amounts of alcohol are actually good for health. Small amounts being no more than 2 glasses, so let's say red wine, a beer, or a shot of a whiskey, a small shot of whiskey. They said that this is not only not bad for your health, but in some ways it can actually help increase your health. One way was by increasing a protective form of cholesterol carrier called HDL cholesterol. Well, in recent years, that the research on alcohol has indicated that no amount of alcohol is actually healthy. For one thing, alcohol is a neurotoxin. It always destroys brain cells. Second, it's a more important, or more, let's say, more to the point for people involved in bodybuilding or sports. Alcohol is a myotoxin. It actually destroys or inhibits muscle protein synthesis, and it blunts muscle growth. It also adversely affects testosterone production. Also, it's still a third way of lowering your testosterone, which a lot of people overlook, are what they call, what do they call them again? Endocrine disruptors. These are various types of substances that are not necessarily added to food, but for example, I'll give you one: bisphenol A, BPA. It's still found in some types of plastic bottles. With the knowledge that BPA is an endocrine disruptor, a lot of bottled water companies have stopped using BPA. It used to be found in every type of bottled water that was a plastic bottle. It still exists in a lot of foods. The plastic bottles, they made with BPA. It's a endocrine disruptor. The body treats it like an estrogen. It interferes with testosterone metabolism. There's other endocrine disruptors. I'm not going to get into it now. I write about it in my Applied Metabolics publication, but that's still another way. In this video, however, I want to focus on probably the most common ways that men can lower their testosterone without realizing it, which is through nutrition, eating certain foods. Now, it's estimated that 1.2 to 12.8% of men have low testosterone levels. Of course, it's more common in men over 40. Your testosterone levels start to drop 1 to 2% a year starting at age 30 in most men. So by the time, and some men it accelerates a little bit faster than others, but in most men by the time they're 50, at least 50% of men tend to have what they call hypogonadism or low testosterone levels. So you don't want to do something that's going to make it worse, like eating certain foods. Having low testosterone is associated with a couple of bad health effects or negative health effects, including obesity, what they call the metabolic syndrome, which is a cluster of syndromes including a wider waist, high blood glucose, high blood lipids that are associated with the onset of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. And low testosterone itself is associated with the onset of type 2 diabetes, especially if you have the genetic tendency towards type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease, and also osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is a bone-thinning disease more common in women, but older men can get it because of the fact that a certain amount of testosterone that's produced is converted into estrogen. Estrogen is needed to maintain bone health. That's the relationship of testosterone to osteoporosis. It's needed for the actual production of estrogen, which is bone protecting. Let's talk about some of the foods now. Some of these might surprise you. These are the things that can cause a lowering of blood testosterone levels. Mints, spearmint, and peppermint are one study that lasted a month that was published in 2010. It involved 42 women. It showed that drinking spearmint herbal tea caused a significant decline in testosterone levels. Another animal study found that administering spearmint essential oil to rats for 20 days also reduced their testosterone levels. An older animal study found that drinking peppermint tea altered hormone levels in rats, leading to a decrease in testosterone compared to a control group of rats that didn't drink peppermint tea. So you got to be careful of mints. Now, I hasten to add that this usually involves larger intake of, let's say, spearmint or peppermint. If you eat it small amounts, I strongly doubt it's going to have much of an effect on the testosterone levels. Let me see. I'm trying to look up that study with women to see how much they gave them. And it doesn't say, unfortunately. It doesn't say. These women also had a disease called polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is marked by elevated androgen levels. So the next food and this one I've known for years, licorice root. Licorice root is a little bit more potent than mints at lowering testosterone levels. Licorice, a 2003 study of 25 men who consumed 7 grams of licorice root daily, it led to a 26% drop in testosterone levels after only 1 week. Another study showed that licorice can reduce testosterone levels in women as well. The women who consumed 3.5 grams of licorice showed a decreased testosterone level of 32%. So that's in women. A 2021 animal study found that licorice extract helped raise testosterone levels in mice who were injected with a substance called methyltrexate. Just as this study there, this last one, is just another indication of how what applies to animals doesn't necessarily apply to humans, because this animal study showed that licorice extract raised testosterone, whereas the human studies show that it lowers testosterone. That's why you got to be real careful of animal studies. Anyway, the next one, flaxseed. Flaxseed is often recommended as a source of omega-3. It's a good source of fiber. In fact, flaxseed contains alpha-linoleic acid, which is a precursor to the bioactive forms of omega-3, which is EPA and DHA. So it's not really that great a source of omega-3. Unfortunately, some research shows it can cause a decrease in testosterone levels. They link it to a high content of a substance called lignans. Those are plant compounds that in some cases can bind to testosterone and force it to be excreted from the body. And believe it or not, this is going to be bad news to a lot of people. Polyunsaturated fats, including omega-3 fatty acids, can also lower testosterone. I think you'd have to take probably fairly massive amounts of omega-3 for that to happen. the usual suggestion for omega-3, I'm talking about the bioactive forms such as DHA and EPA, is a total of 2 grams a day. I don't think 2 grams a day omega-3 is going to significantly lower testosterone in men. I've seen some studies showing that it has no effect on testosterone. Other studies showing that higher doses, let's say more than 6-7 grams of omega-3, can lower testosterone. A 2001 study in 25 men who had prostate cancer showed that when they were given flaxseed and if they decreased their overall fat intake, it significantly lowered testosterone levels, which brings up another point. If you consume less than 20% of your calories as dietary fat, you will also get lower testosterone levels. You need some fat to produce testosterone in your body. The 2 types of fat known to significantly affect testosterone levels are what they call monounsaturated fat, and the other one is, believe it or not, saturated fat, the so-called bad fat. I should also point out that some studies show that monounsaturated fat, such as found in nuts and extra virgin olive oil, in large amounts can also lower testosterone. So, if you're looking for a fat source to maintain your testosterone level, the best one probably, believe it or not, would be saturated fat, the one that's the evil fat that some people link to cardiovascular disease. You don't need to eat a lot of saturated fat. The American Heart Association suggests no more than 10% of your calories come from saturated fat, and that's more than enough to maintain testosterone levels. The people that have to worry about dietary fat in relation to testosterone are, for example, vegans, who they usually have very little fat in their diet. There's almost no saturated fat, because saturated fat is almost not found except in coconut oil and a couple other foods. Doesn't exist in vegan food, so they're the ones that have to be a little conscious of fat intake. However, most studies that have compared testosterone levels in vegans, meaning people that live exclusively on plant foods, compare them to omnivores who eat animal protein foods, meat, fish, and eggs, so forth, have shown similar testosterone levels. So somehow, I don't know how, the vegans are able to maintain their testosterone levels, even though they probably don't even get 20% of their calories as dietary fat. A case study reported that daily flaxseed supplements decreased testosterone levels in a 31-year-old woman who had polycystic ovarian syndrome. The polycystic ovarian syndrome is marked by increased testosterone levels to the extent that these women actually start to develop hair on their face. It's almost like they're using anabolic steroids, because when you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, the female body tends to produce more adrenal steroids, which can be converted into testosterone. One of the ways they treat it is by giving substances such as spironolactone, which is often used as a diuretic by bodybuilders, called aldactone, that blocks testosterone, and that's a treatment for polycystic ovarian syndrome. But apparently flax seeds can also lower it in women with that problem. Now, I mentioned fats. I mentioned that saturated fat and monounsaturated fat help maintain testosterone levels. One type of fat that lowers testosterone level is trans fats. Trans fats are basically artificial fats, although they do exist in nature naturally. But it's a fat that it's been banned in food since 2015. But the government still allows less than, I think it's 1% trans fat to still be added to food. You can tell a food that has trans fat because it'll say partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. That is that's trans fat. Anytime you see that on a food label, you know it has trans fats. And even though the government supposedly minimizes the amount that could be included in fat, any amount of trans fat is no good. It's associated with increased cardiovascular disease, cancer, and also it interferes with amino acid metabolism, and it could reduce muscle protein synthesis and interfere with muscle gains. Studies have shown that trans fats can also decrease testosterone level. A study of 209 men showed that The men who consumed the highest amounts of trans fats had 15% lower levels of testosterone compared with men who had low intakes. In addition, they also had a 37% lower sperm count and a decrease in testicular volume, which means that their balls shrank. So you want to keep away and never ever eat trans fats. It has no beneficial effects at all. 100% negative. Now, there is a form. What the hell? I'm not even going to get into it. I'm just going to skip it. Anyway, the next one I mentioned alcohol. Alcohol also lowers testosterone. However, there was a 2004 study in 19 healthy adults who showed that consuming 30 to 40 grams of alcohol a day, which is about 2 to 3 standard drinks, decreased testosterone levels in men by 6.8% over a 3-week period. A 2014 study showed that alcohol reduced semen and changed reproductive hormones in young Danish men. So I would keep away from that. I personally, I don't think, contrary to what some people still say, I don't see any beneficial effects from drinking alcohol. I know that a lot of guys like to drink beer and wine or all that, but it's the idea that alcohol is good for you in any amount is nonsense. As a matter of fact, they came out with some studies. Certain women who have a certain genetic predisposition to breast cancer, alcohol is absolute poison to these women because it'll stimulate changes in their body that promote breast cancer, even the normal doses of alcohol. Alcohol, as I said, is a brain toxin and a muscle toxin and also lowers testosterone. Don't drink it. Certain types of nuts can also affect testosterone levels. A study of 31 women who also had polycystic ovarian syndrome showed that eating walnuts and almonds increased levels of sex hormone binding globulin by 12.5 and 16% respectively. Now, what is sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG? Sex hormone binding globulin are proteins produced in the liver that lock onto testosterone and carry it through the body. As long as testosterone is kind of locked on to sex hormone binding globulin, it's not active. Only the free or unbound testosterone, it's also carried in the blood by another protein called albumin. Only these forms of testosterone can interact with androgen receptors and are active. This is why measurement of total testosterone is not really an accurate measurement of your testosterone in your body, because it takes into account the bound testosterone, which is not capable of doing anything because it's inactive. The only active form of testosterone is free testosterone. I'm going to have an article in my Applied Metabolics coming up very soon talking about the problems with testosterone testing, where a lot of men who are found to have normal testosterone levels actually are hypogonadal. They actually have low testosterone levels. Therefore, they are unable to get any type of testosterone from their doctors. Nobody's talked about this. I will talk about it in Applied Metabolics. As I mentioned before, polyunsaturated fatty acids, including vegetable oils and, unfortunately, omega-3 fish oils, they've been associated with decreased testosterone. But again, I think as far as in relation to omega-3, I think you'd have to take rather large amounts. Taking normal amounts of, let's say, 2 to 4 grams a day of EPA and DHA, I don't believe is going to lower testosterone. I haven't seen any convincing evidence, but taking large amounts could possibly interfere with testosterone. The most famous food that's associated with lower testosterone, of course, is soy. Internet, these trolls on internet like to use terms like soy boy in reference to vegans, because soy, of course, is a vegan food. It's very popular. Soy is one of the only foods that contain a good complement of amino acids. Some studies compare soy to animal proteins, which isn't true. I'm not going to get into the reasons why, but again, there's an upcoming article in my Applied Metabolics where I'm going to talk about how soy really affects hormone levels, how it affects your training, how it affects muscle gains. This is going to be the whole story. It's going to be in Applied Metabolics. Suffice to say that a lot of the idea that soy lowers testosterone comes from animal studies. For example, a rat study from 2001 showed that eating soy decreased testosterone levels. What is it about soy that can decrease testosterone levels? Soy contains substances called phytoestrogens. Phyto means plant, and estrogens, of course, are estrogens, which are hormones. Anyway, the two phytoestrogens is genistein, dietestin. These are found in soy, and they are structurally, they look a lot like estrogen. So there could be good things and bad things about that. The good thing about soy isoflavones is there's two different kinds of estrogen receptors, unlike androgen receptors. Two estrogen receptors. One type of androgen receptor stimulates prostate cancer. The other type of estrogen receptor opposes the first estrogen receptor and actually prevents prostate cancer. It turns out that soy stimulates the estrogen receptor that prevents prostate cancer. They think that the higher consumption of soy in Asian countries accounts for the lower cases of prostate cancer in these countries. They have some among the lowest rates of prostate cancer. Not only that, but a number of recent studies where they've looked very carefully at soy and its relationship with testosterone have found no effects whatsoever on testosterone. None. However, I'll quickly add, I have seen a couple of case studies. What I mean by case studies, these are studies involving maybe one or two people at the most. There was one guy who was drinking something like 5 quarts of soy milk. And what happened with this, he was doing this for months at a time, and he developed signs of elevated estrogen, including gynecomastia, which is male breast formation. Sometimes guys get that when they use steroids that can aromatize or be converted into estrogen. They can also get gynecomastia. The gynecomastia is a sign of elevated estrogen levels in the male body. However, the thing is, this guy was drinking. He was also eating soy foods. I can't even remember them. Some of these soy-based foods, and he was drinking over 4 quarts of soy. Don't ask me why. I don't know why, but he wound up with very elevated estrogen levels. So, in other words, if you take in massive amounts of soy, it will start to act as an estrogen in men's body. It will interfere with testosterone production. But you have to be taking massive amounts. The amount that's found in soy protein products and moderate amounts of soy foods will not, I repeat, will not affect testosterone levels, contrary to what you might hear or read. Anyone who says that is just full of crap, period. So there you go. What about eggs? There was an interesting study that found that giving egg white powder helped increase testosterone levels in men with obesity. I think that the eggs also contain cholesterol. Now, cholesterol is the actual raw material for testosterone and production in the body. Your testosterone in men and women is made from testosterone. In fact, the word steroid indicates that it's made from cholesterol. So, believe it or not, the cholesterol that's in eggs actually can contribute to testosterone formation. They did a study with older people who were involved in a weight training program. They gave one group of these are people that are over, let's say, 60 years old. They gave one group whole eggs, maybe 3 or 4 eggs a day, something like that. The other people ate no eggs, and they were put on the same exact weight training program. The older people that ate the whole eggs showed greater muscle gains than the people that did not eat eggs. The scientists who conducted the study weren't sure why, but they suggested that possibly the extra cholesterol that was in the eggs was, because as I said earlier, with age, testosterone levels tend to drop. The scientists hypothesized that the cholesterol in the eggs that the older people were eating possibly raised their testosterone levels enough where they got a little bit of a muscle building edge compared to the older people that were not eating the eggs. So I think that's about it for the the testosterone levels. Just as an anecdote, I just want to add, I mentioned early, and I've mentioned this in past videos about not relying on animal studies because, there's a real problem with a lot of YouTube videos and blogs where the people that produce these videos or write these blogs, I've seen it over and over again, so-called science blogs, where they'll have headlines, so-and-so increases testosterone, and you read the study, and it turns out it was a rat study. There's been supplements, especially testosterone boosting supplements, such as Fedosia and these other supplements, that are based entirely on rat studies. There's no human studies to prove their efficacy at all. But again, what happens in a rat or any other lab animal does not always translate into human studies. I don't know how many times I have to repeat that. As a matter of fact, 50% of rat studies or animal studies do not translate into human physiology, meaning over half of the rat studies don't pan out when they do the human studies. The same thing that affected the rats does not affect humans whatsoever. And conversely, certain things that could harm rats, such as causing cancer in rats, do not cause cancer in humans, and again, vice versa. I was just looking at a site right before I did this video. It was about a experimental substance that's sold as a supplement that supposedly dramatically increases dopamine in the brain. Now, dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with mental drive, energy, and also sexuality. It increases your sex drive. I like the fact that it increases alertness and increases your drive, and and also increases your let's say your willingness or your drive to work out. It's very useful, to have a good amount of dopamine in the brain. You don't want too much, because too much dopamine, you get schizophrenia. Too little, and you have Parkinson's disease. But, I already take a couple of natural substances that are reputed to increase dopamine. But I looked at this video where one of these so-called biohacker schmucks was pushing this supplement, and he talking about how, it greatly increases dopamine. It's very good if you have dopamine exhaustion from using drugs like Adderall or cocaine and this and that. Anyway, it seemed interesting, and he mentioned a couple of studies. So what I did is, and this is what I always do, I went online and I looked at the research on this stuff, and there was not a single human study. Not a single human study to prove this stuff works. However, the animal studies, I have to admit, were pretty impressive. The animal studies show that, sure enough, it had a definite increase, in boosting dopamine levels in the brain. In fact, a couple of studies suggested it can be used to treat Parkinson's disease, which is characterized by a lack of dopamine due to loss of dopamine-producing cells in the brain. And it also inhibited two enzymes called monoamine oxidase enzymes that are known to break down dopamine in the brain. So, the mechanisms look really good. But I didn't purchase it because I just don't like the fact that there's not a single human study. I don't know how it's going to affect. I mean, there's a couple of there's anecdotal reports of people that have used it. It did this, it did that, increased my energy, blah 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 blah. Those, I don't go by that. That could be what they call placebo effects. If you believe something's going to work, 9 times out of 10 it'll work. And just conversely, if you think something's going to harm you, 9 times out of 10 you will feel bad on it. That's called a nocebo effect. So I don't go by anecdotal reports. That means garbage to me. Just because some guy said this supplement or that supplement worked, that doesn't mean a thing. I want to see some solid studies, placebo-controlled studies where they gave a fake substance versus the real substance to humans, and it showed that the stuff worked. See a couple of those studies, that'll convince me. So here's my point here is a lot of these studies that have to do with testosterone boosters, testosterone elements that either raise or lower testosterone, unfortunately, they're based on animal studies. So take them with a grain of salt. They may or not have any relationship to human physiology. If you want more information on nutrition, exercise science, anti-aging research, ergogenic aids, supplement science, which supplements work, which ones don't, and I'm talking about human research, not animal research, women's health and fitness, effective fat loss techniques. All of these are covered in Applied Metabolics. It's 30 to 50 pages every month. www.appliedmetabolics.com. It has no advertising. I don't push any products. If I mention a supplement, I will not use a product name because I am not an unpaid shill for supplement companies. And as I said, there's no advertisements in Applied Metabolics. It's just pure evidence-based information that includes my over 61 years of constant study and experience, which cannot be duplicated by anyone I know of on the internet who publishes a digital publication. I was also, of course, I worked for bodybuilding magazines for over 30 years. I interviewed all the top bodybuilders. I know all the tricks. All of this is given or supplied in Applied Metabolics. So subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. When you subscribe, send me an email. I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics Facebook page, where each day I post new information on nutrition, exercise science, and general health and medicine. I have an email portal, my Applied Metabolics webpage, where I take, I'll answer short questions submitted to me by current subscribers to Applied Metabolics only. I don't accept or answer unsolicited questions. I answer these questions as an added bonus of subscribing to Applied Metabolics, and also, of course, an appreciation of a subscription to Applied Metabolics. So again, that's only for current subscribers. So again, subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. I guarantee you'll learn something no matter what your level of current knowledge. I don't care how much you think you know, you will learn something from reading Applied Metabolics. How do I know that? Because as I said, I've been studying this stuff for over 6 decades. When I do the research for these articles in Applied Metabolics, I always learn something myself. Always. There's always something new to learn about this stuff. So what else can I say? If you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. And by the way, if you like my videos, you think they're of value, please let others know about my channel. It's free. I post a new video every Tuesday. Of course, feel free to subscribe yourself. If you care to, you could leave comments under the video about ideas for future videos. And if I feel that the topic interests a large number of people, I will do a video on it if I can find enough evidence-based data on it to justify the video. So I guess that's about it, other than to say, if you want to have the best friend you'll ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. Take care. Thank you for listening.